It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Well, seems like one of us was really overconfident yesterday in our preview of the Elite Eight. And now, here to, eat some crow, I guess. It's unfortunate the way things went down on Tuesday night, which I'm sure a lot of you are still exhausted. I am, just from, I'm always up late, but I don't know, something different it's something different when you're like up organically late. And it's another thing when you're held up late to watch a game. But I've had a lot of time to collect my thoughts, see if I can coherently present them, but obviously did not go good for Michigan basketball. I thought that, aside from like Minnesota and Illinois, that was the worst game that Michigan played all year. And it came in the worst time. And I was on SiriusXM earlier, and they brought up some good points that got me thinking that I hadn't thought about in the time in which everything happened. But, yeah, not good. Not a good time. This was the type of game where you really needed Isaiah Livers. You really needed Isaiah Livers, because that would have, I think, been the difference. And that's why, it was a different team. But the thing is what we saw for the last 3 games before that was a team that kind of figured out who it was without Isaiah Livers. And he was just so needed in this particular game. Because if you had Isaiah Livers, I'm pretty confident things would have been different. But let's try to break it down. Let's try to break down what actually did happen, not the woulda, coulda, shouldas. But, it's kind of still the woulda, coulda, shouldas, but I still think my colleague Asher Lowe, even though he picked UCLA to win, he picked it thinking that there was going to be big games for everyone. Michigan still did pretty well defensively, except for on one guy, Johnny Juzang, who finished with, 28 points? Had 18 in the first half, 10 in the second. Granted, 2 of those points came in, at the end. Michigan put him on the line. Campbell had 11. There was otherwise no one that there was, I think, 2 guys with 4 points and 1 guy with 2. Otherwise, that's it. The fact that Jaquez only got 4 is a huge win. But other than that, it did not go well for Michigan offensively. Defensively, pretty good. You hold a team to, 58 points? I don't even remember now what it was. But, you hold a team in the 50s and you have the number 5 offense or 7 offense, whatever it was, in the country, you feel like, all right, should be able to go out there and do it. But they couldn't. Obviously, the biggest culprit is not hitting any shots in the last 5 minutes, 5+ minutes. Hit any shots, and you're good. Any. Went 0 for 8. It's not going to work. Don't go 6 of 11 from the free throw line. It's the other big thing. You have 80% type free throw shooters missing both. Free throw shooting has been weird in the tournament for Michigan. It reverted back, and even with players like Hunter Dickinson that haven't been on the roster before, it kind of reverted back to what it was before, where it was like, sending Michigan to the line, smart move. Just did not work. you have to credit UCLA. They had a great defensive plan. I thought that Hunter Dickinson, I agreed with Tim McCormick. I thought Hunter Dickinson was going to score with impunity. But they brought guys to him, and he was out of his position, and he didn't look comfortable, and he made some freshman mistakes. I would have liked to see him kick the ball out. There was a point when I watched the game with Matt Leach, and there was some times where he said, you just got to get Hunter out of there. And I said, no, you know what? I say you keep Hunter in there, but you tell him, get there. If it's not there, pass out of that situation, because in a lot of those situations, 3 guys were open. You have an open shot. Normally, you see Michigan do that. Oh, you're gonna put 3 guys on Hunter, 4 guys on Hunter. Well, he's gonna pass out of it, and there were opportunities to. It wasn't like there weren't opportunities to. Like you didn't have a lane to pass to somebody. It just didn't happen. But I understand that was probably the game plan. Hunter's got a size advantage on everybody. So go for it. But you know what? These things happen. That's the thing with the tournament. You hit one shot. Game is different. The officiating, which is not something I like to talk about too much, but it does affect the game. And you had that makeup call for the one that Mick Cronin was whining about. Where they're like, oh, I totally got fouled. Yeah, he totally got fouled. And he was so far away from him. And then next time down the floor, phantom foul. I think the biggest and most egregious one was the hook and hold that didn't get called. Michigan still retained possession. They got a foul out of it. But it should have been a flagrant. It should have been 2 free throws and the ball. When you lose by 2 points, that's huge. Credit the guys for battling back. When they were down 9, felt like, all right, this is it. And heck, even at late, because we've seen it, it kind of felt like one of those threes was going to go in at the very end, and that Michigan was going to have that Houston feeling, right? I really felt that way. But it just didn't. All right, we're going to continue on here in a moment, but first, let's talk a little bit about Built Bar. Y'all know how much I love Built Bar. I put my money where my mouth is so many times. I've bought so many boxes. Right now, they've got some supply of the white chocolate raspberry cheesecake, which I've had a few of those. They're phenomenal. They're absolutely incredible. But you know, between that or the toffee almond or the almond coconut, I mean, these are delicious. They taste like a candy bar. They are high protein, low calorie, low carb. What else do you want? Delicious, and you know what? Most of them are about 130 calories. Try to get that from your other leading protein bar. And guess what? They're more delicious than the ones that are 250 or more for the same ones that are the same size. So with that in mind, go to BuiltBar.com, put in the promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off that next order. BuiltBar.com, LOCKED15, 15% off your next order at BuiltBar.com.
Yeah, you're making sports bets, but are you making winning sports bets? To win consistently, you need an edge, research, analytics. It's a lot. Or you could let BetQL do the work for you. Every game, every potential bet, from winners and losers to all the sides and totals, line movement, player props, and more. All backed by BetQL's proven data and analytics. BetQL analyzes over 350,000 unique bets every year and rates each potential bet on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. A 5-star is definitely a smart bet. 1 star, smart money is staying away. BetQL even lets you sort all of today's games with the best options listed right there at the top of your screen. BetQL gives you access to the same information the pros use. The stuff the sportsbooks don't want you to see. It's time to bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL. Visit BetQL.com today and use promo code PODCAST for 20% off. That's 20% off with promo code PODCAST at BetQL.com.
All right, so one of the things, like I said, on SiriusXM, they brought up, why did Michigan decide that they were just going to play UCLA's pace? Which I think is an interesting question. Now, like I've been saying for a very long time, all season long, one of the great things about this Michigan team is you can, whatever you want to play, Michigan can play at your pace. And like I said, playing a slower pace is a little bit more of what Michigan prefers to do. So I had no problem with that. None at all. But I would have liked to see them break out of that every now and again. Didn't seem like we saw them really running and trying to do some, really make UCLA not know what's coming. It was like UCLA knew they were going to come down, get into their set, and, try to move the ball, get it inside, and go from there. I mean, yeah, they got tons of points in the paint again. But at the same time, you know what? If you can push the tempo here and there, tire them out, gas them out, especially because they really only have 6 guys that they want on the court throughout the whole game, you've got that much better of a shot to get a better shot. I don't care if it doesn't work. At least they don't know what's coming. They have to, try to adjust on the fly. So I am a little surprised that they, I don't have a problem with it, but I'm a little surprised that they didn't do that more, that Michigan didn't do that more. I thought it was an incredible performance for Brandon Johns on both ends of the court. I wish I would have seen him a little bit more, to be honest. I thought Eli Brooks was excellent on both ends of the court. Loved seeing him at the point. I thought that Franz Wagner was excellent on the defensive side, but obviously offensively he's got to do more than 4 points. And it wasn't for a lack of trying, but man, what a bad day to have one of your worst offensive performances ever. And this is what we've talked about with Franz. Inconsistency. He is inconsistent. So that's not ideal. Mike Smith did not have a good game. Really liked what we saw from Austin Davis. Who am I forgetting here? I think I mentioned Sean D already. Thought he was great. Would have liked to see Sean D or Eli Brooks be with the guy to have that last shot. Instead, you gave it to the 2 guys that were struggling. And that's fine to some degree, right? Like, because the way you look at it, you can't second guess that. It's armchair quarterbacking to some degree, because you know what? If Mike Smith hit that 3 or Franz hit that 3, either way, instead we're talking about look at Juwan having the faith in his guys and how it paid off for him. I don't have a problem with that, because these guys have played a lot of basketball. Sometimes it's not your night, but we've seen Franz heat up late. We've seen Franz make the big shot when it counted. They didn't, neither him or Mike Smith, neither of them did it yesterday. But it's fine. All of these guys, we've seen them make the big shot that they needed to make. They just didn't make it yesterday when it was needed to stick around in Indianapolis instead of coming home to Ann Arbor, to being able to cut the nets. Turnovers were obviously a giant issue. Giant issue. And against a team that doesn't turn the ball over that much, that's not an ideal situation. I believe it was 14 turnovers with 14 points off turnovers. But otherwise, I mean, Michigan technically outshot UCLA. UCLA just had more opportunities. Michigan out-rebounded UCLA. But UCLA still had more opportunities because 14 turnovers. Missing at the free throw line. Things of that nature. Sometimes it's just not your night. I thought UCLA played an excellent defensive game. They talked about it on the broadcast, about them being more vocal. You could hear it on TV. You could hear them communicating, taking a page out of Michigan's playbook. But at the same time, while it's easy to be morose about the situation, about Michigan getting sent home, the Elite Eight felt like the Final Four was there for the taking, considering they're without their self-described best player in Isaiah Livers. And I think that's become evident, right? Like, we talk about Hunter Dickinson and Franz Wagner, and we see them in spurts. Isaiah Livers, last time we talked about him coming out of a game was... Obviously, he did not have a good game in his last game, potentially in a Michigan uniform. And we find out he was injured. But it was like, okay, your most steady, your guy that you know is going to get you 14 points getting 0, it can't happen. It can't happen again. Well, unfortunately, that was what ended up happening down the stretch. And if you would have told me back then, you're not going to have Isaiah Livers for the Big Ten or the NCAA tournaments, then I would look at it and say, probably going to get bounced in the Big Ten tournament and lucky to make it out of the Sweet 16. Guess what? They did better than that. They made it to the Elite Eight against an opponent they should have beat. I think if Michigan played UCLA 10 times, they probably win 7 of those games. I think UCLA could get 3, and unfortunately they got one of them last night. Michigan season is over. But an injury at a bad time, to your most important player. It's not just a player. And I say most important player, Eli Brooks is equally as important. We've seen what happens for Michigan when Eli Brooks does not play. It does not bode well. So I think the next thing is trying to figure out what's next. What happens next for this Michigan basketball team? What happens next year? We are going to get into that in just a moment. But first, betonline.ag. BetOnline.ag is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Football might be over, but NBA, we still got Final Four for college basketball and beyond. In the NHL, they're in full swing. BetOnline even covers award shows, TV shows, reality TV. I forgot to mention MLB. That's happening starting tonight, tomorrow. Real-time updated odds, props on almost anything you can imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, the scores, and the odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and guess what? It's free to sign up. Head over to betonline.ag to sign up today. Use that promo code LOCKEDON to receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
All right, so we've covered everything that went wrong, I feel, yesterday. Turnovers, missed free throws, long offensive stretches where Michigan just didn't score. Just some questionable decision-making, freshman mistakes from Dickinson. I think that covers that. Where does Michigan go from here? And this is something I'm intending on writing up tomorrow as well. But so this is kind of me brainstorming it with you somewhat. Because you look at the roster and you wonder, I mean, you're adding, 5 guys? You've got Frankie Collins, the 4-star point guard, coming in. You've got the 2 5-stars, Moussa Diabate and Caleb Houston. You've got Isaiah Barnes. You got Kobe Buffkin. And you've got Will Shetter. Of course, you can add more to that. There's still some people out there that are on the board. Chet Holmgren is still on the board. It kind of seems like maybe just reading the tea leaves, he might be Gonzaga bound, just from what I see on Twitter, which isn't exactly reliable. But, you also have the other IMG Academy guy whose name escapes me. But there's still some options to make that a 6th strong. But you look at the guys that are, everyone can come back. It's a free year. You want to come back, it's yours. Juwan Howard has been lobbying for Isaiah Livers to come back for 1 more year. Will he do it? I doubt it, personally. But maybe that lobbying, maybe the way things ended, unfinished business, you never know. He might look at it and say, listen, we were so close. If I was there, could have made it happen. Maybe he, I would all but expect him to enter the NBA draft again. Maybe he hears 2nd round and says, you know what? I'd rather not sit in the G League. I'd rather assert myself that much more and come back. But I'm going to say I don't expect that to happen. I think Franz Wagner is probably going to do the same thing, go back into the NBA draft. I think, kind of like Jordan Poole, someone's going to see, they're going to look beyond the inconsistency and say, you know what, with some coaching at our level, we're going to be able to get him there. And I think that Franz Wagner would probably be gone. That would be my guess. They're not the only ones. You've still got Sean D. Brown and Mike Smith. Almost said Mike Brown. Yeah, former coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Mike Brown. Plays point guard for Michigan. Sean D is an interesting one because we've seen what he can do with Wake Forest. We've seen him in spurts, but again, inconsistency, because there's games where he comes in and he gives you 15 points and you're like, man, Sean D made all the difference. And then he has games where he goes out there and goes 0 for as a sixth man. Franz Wagner goes, maybe Sean D Brown's like, you know what? Let's see what I can do with one more year as a starter. Let's see what I can do one more year in this system. I would not be surprised if Sean D came back. I also would not be surprised if Mike Smith comes back. Because I think with Mike Smith, I think you're not looking at the NBA. You're looking at overseas, probably. So I would not be surprised if he came back as well. I would imagine Hunter Dickinson's going to stay, but you never know. He's got his one. Very well could be done. We've seen it happen. Happened with Iggy. But I don't, and let's face it. I mean, Hunter, better than Iggy. Very well could say, you know what? Let's do it. I think he needs one more year, personally, to reach his potential. But you never know. Eli Brooks is another one I wouldn't be surprised if he came back. He said after the game he's still weighing his options. I would not surprise me at all if he came back. That would be a huge boost for Michigan if he did. Brandon Johns, technically a senior, but a redshirt junior. I would imagine he would come back. I think if Livers is gone, I think it's Brandon Johns' time. And I really liked what I saw from him down the stretch. Went from being like early season, didn't really look like he picked up where he left off, looked a little problematic, didn't quite go that way. Didn't quite get as much time as he did the year before. I kind of feel like it's Brandon Johns' time now. So I would imagine that he would be a big part of the rotation as a starter next year, assuming everyone else leaves. Not, that has not everyone else, but a couple people leave. Who else as far as the contributors? Austin Davis, the other senior. I don't know. Do you want another year, Austin? I don't know, but he I have a lot of confidence in him. Like, it felt like a fun little thing that we could talk about last year. But this year, like, especially coming off the bench, it's like you knew that Austin was going to get that he was going to get 4, 6, 8 points. You knew it was going to happen. It was a lot of fun. I have no idea what he would do. But then you got all the other guys. I think all the freshmen likely are staying. Obviously Jace Howard's not going anywhere. Zeb Jackson waiting his turn. Expect him to be more in rotation, especially if Eli leaves. Then it's going to be more Zeb time. Terrence Williams just got primed a little bit. Obviously, I think he's going to be good there. Makes me wonder for some of those guys like Adrian Nunez. Came back. Kind of felt like, if you would have asked me this time last year, I'd have been like, well, Nunez is gone. Colin Castleton's obviously staying. David DeJulius obviously stayed. Those two transferred. And Adrian stayed. But, he saw no minutes, essentially, this year. But then you still got the 5 freshmen coming in. So roster management, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. Got 17 guys right now. Roster can be loaded. That said, if you get 2 of those 5, I think that I mentioned, Isaiah Livers, Franz Wagner, Austin Davis, Eli Brooks, and, or Mike Smith and Shondy. 6. 2 or 3 of those 6, if you can get those guys to come back, having that leadership, especially if it's Eli Brooks. I mean, I'm not discounting Isaiah Livers, but especially if it's Eli Brooks, who I feel like just has that it. But imagine if you can get Eli and Isaiah, which I would not put money on. I think that you're setting yourself up for a very bright future next year and beyond. I think this is going to be a team to contend with going just forward. And I was asked yesterday for Locked On Today, do I feel like what happened last night is indicative of the Big Ten and its downfall here? 0 teams in the Final Four. No. I think Michigan, anything you got past the Sweet 16 or getting to the Sweet 16 was gravy, given the injury to Isaiah Livers. Now, I mean, obviously, if Livers is gone, you got to retool, but I think they have the pieces to do it. I think next year, just right now, I would say Elite 8 team again. What they do with everything from there, we'll see. Jawan said this is a learning experience for me. And let's face it, it is. It was his first NCAA tournament as a head coach. And he got him to the Elite 8. Got him within 2 points to go into a Final Four. 3, technically. So I still think the future for Michigan basketball is bright. And I think that people are going to be very excited in Ann Arbor for some time. All right, that'll do it for us today. We got the mailbag coming up tomorrow. Get your questions in. I've already posed the question on Twitter. So go get your questions in. We'll be back Thursday. Thank you for listening today. And a sad, morose day. We're all tired and have to deal with the fact that Michigan basketball season is over. But we will talk to you soon. Peace.
I'm Nolan Bianchi, 1/3 of the crew over at Locked On Red Wings, and it's officially draft season. Well, for us anyways. We're the only place to get daily draft coverage geared toward your Detroit Red Wings between now and July 23rd, with prospect interviews, sleeper analysis, conversations with the biggest names in scouting on draft philosophy and strategy, and over 60 draft profiles. So don't miss another interview, and don't be that guy on draft day that's scrambling to find out whose name was just called. Be the smartest hockey fan you can be, and subscribe to Locked On Red Wings.